The world is holding its breath. The whole world is waiting to see what Iran does next. Iran, for 40 years, sanctioned, marginalized, reviled, attacked, subject to terrorist attack after attack, and subverted from within by enemies within, has come to the top. Iran is now a power and a force to be reckoned with. A very good example of necessity being the mother of invention. In 2010, the Western narrative was don't sell weapons to Iran. In 2024, the narrative is don't buy weapons from Iran. Through necessity, through being surrounded by a sea of hostile enemies, many of them nuclear armed, Iran has had to become a self-sufficient power in military technology, and it has done so. And there's a queue outside its door seeking to buy and to take advantage of these great advances that have been made. Nobody pretends that Iran's sovereignty was not grievously wounded by the Israeli assassination of an honored and important guest in the Iranian capital, Tehran. Dr. Ismail Haniyeh was the chief negotiator of the Palestinian side, negotiating a ceasefire with the government in Tel Aviv, and still they murdered him. And they murdered him deliberately in Tehran as a provocation to Iran. Nobody disputes that Iran has the right of self-defense. Having been attacked by a foreign power, possibly in collusion with other foreign powers, Iran has every right to do what it is going to do next. The question is, what will that be? I predict it will be military action of a new type. It will be a retaliation, a response of a kind that we have not seen before, both in terms of quantity and quality. It will be a special military operation. It will not be over in a few hours or even in a few days. It will be an ongoing determination to deter. It will be a signal that the days when the apartheid state could roam around the region, dishing out murder and mayhem at will, with impunity, with no fear of retribution, that those times have come to an end. It might be tonight, it might be tomorrow night, it might be next week. Fox News says it will be tonight, but then they said that last night also. No one knows except the most senior members of the leadership in Iran. But the fact that we are even now discussing how the military balance of power in the region has shifted to the extent that almost anything is possible. There could be a ground invasion, liberation of the Galilee. There could be a ground liberation of Syria's Golan Heights, illegally held by Israel for almost half a century. It could be the total destruction of the political and military architecture of the apartheid state. The fact that we can even contemplate any or all of these things shows how the tectonic plates in the Middle East have shifted, and they have shifted in favor of the axis of resistance. You've come to the right place to discuss this tonight, because this is Have It Out with Galloway. Dr. Shivan Mahendrarajah is a fellow of the Royal Historical Society, and that is something to be. Shivan is the author of books and articles on Islam, on Iran, on Afghanistan, on the Mongols, on the Timurids in the counterinsurgency, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban in Afghanistan and Pakistan. This is a man of the world. And I wanted to speak to Dr. Shivan this evening about what is going to happen next. Dr. Shivan, neither you nor I know exactly what's happening. We're not privy to the highest councils in any way. But would I be right in speculating that having waited a considerable period of time caused the crashing of stock markets around the world, caused the flight of scores of thousands of Israelis back to their own countries with their other passports, having cleared the north of occupied Palestine of the settlers there who no longer have any security, having bankrupted the port of Eilat, that the advantage is firmly with the axis of resistance. Am I right?
That is correct. Thank you very much, first and foremost, for inviting me on. I'm quite honored. Thank you so much. You're right. We don't know exactly what they will do or when they will do it, and what forms, how long these things will go on. So we would be speculating. But I think they have to respond, because if they do not, then these provocations could only worsen. They could get to a point where the Israelis think they can strike and kill, IRGC leaders, even Ayatollah Khamenei. So the Iranians have really no choice. They do have to respond, and respond strongly, and let the Israelis know that this will not stand.
It's about deterrence, isn't it? Iran
it is
has
about
to
deterrence,
deter
but I think
Israel
it's
from
also
these kind of
more.
actions.
It's also like what you alluded to about how the country has been, how Israel has weakened. And I think the Iranians also understand is that the more they strangle the Israeli economy, now tourism has collapsed. I think I saw today 46,000 businesses are in bankruptcy or near bankruptcy. Debt has risen, budget deficits have increased, the shekel has fallen. So they understand that by making things harder for the Israelis, they actually will bring them to a point, if they're smart enough, to actually sue for some sort of a peace, and probably a Palestinian state in there as well. But they're not ready for it yet. That is, the Israelis. That's my theory on it anyway.
There's a deep split emerging in the apartheid cabinet between the defense minister Gallant and the prime minister and future convict Netanyahu. What's your reading of that split?
Well, they spent a lot of time fighting among themselves. I mean, this has been a long-standing issue within Israel, in the internal politics. They can be quite vicious between each other, but in the end, they tend to stand together for the most part against a common enemy. So I have read about this split, but I don't know how much it will affect them vis-a-vis a war with Hezbollah or with Iran, because they might just all come together for the purposes of this, and then go back to fighting with each other. And this has gone on for many decades in internal politics of Israel.
Is there any way that Israel can avoid this? What would they have to put on the table now to avoid this just retribution?
Well, very good question. It would have to be something very monumental, far more than a ceasefire. And it would be something that, say, for example, lifting of all sanctions on Iran, but it would have to be something that is a treaty, because, okay, so Biden lifts all sanctions on Iran tomorrow morning. Next president who comes in can bring them all back in the next day. So Iranians know this from the experiences with Trump and the JCPOA, that you can't really make an agreement with the United States unless there is some, broader legal foundation for it. So it would have to be something very big. And I don't think the Israelis are anywhere close to offering anything big because they're too hubristic right now. They're too arrogant, and they think they can get the Americans to do their fighting for them. So they're not, concerned that they know they can't fight Hezbollah or Iran, much less Hezbollah and Iran by themselves. So the whole trick is get the American military to do their fighting for them. This has been going on since the Iraq War. I have a quote here from, Netanyahu from after 9/11. They're benefiting from one thing, that is the attack on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. They used it for Iraq to get the Iraq. So now they're using all of this to get the Americans to fight Iran.
Is that likely to happen in an election year, not just an election year, but only a few months away from a presidential election and down the ticket in the Senate, in the Congress, governors? Do they really want America involved in an all-out regional war, which might not go well for them?
It will not go well for them. I cannot go on a limb and say that. But actually, I have become very cynical about American politics. I'm American. I lived there most of my life, and I have seen how much has changed in American policy decision making, where they will go half-cocked into a war and then realize, oops, we're in trouble. And the military is not that much better. Iraq is a good example of it. They went in, but they had no plans whatsoever in terms of counterinsurgency or even stabilizing the country the day after Saddam fell. So, you can expect the military to go along with whatever comes out of Washington, and whatever comes out of Washington, you just don't know, because right now it's you saw what happened when Netanyahu went to Congress. They were just, hey, the boss is here. Let's all applaud him, pat him on the back, and cheer everything he says, because U.S. Congress doesn't really work for Americans anymore. I said as an American nationalist, it's very upsetting because they don't do anything for us. It's all about Ukraine or about Israel. And so I can expect that the Israeli lobby can get enough support to get the United States into a war. Netanyahu said, another one of his favorite quotes, which I like, is, quote, "I know what America is. America is a thing you can move very easily. Move it in the right direction. They won't get in our way." This is Netanyahu, and he knows this. He's lived in the States, and as an Israeli once joked, he speaks English with a Republican accent. So he knows how to talk to the Congress, especially the Republican senators, evangelicals, but also even among the Democrats. So I won't put anything past U.S. Congress and the Biden and the White House.
Now, Israel has a powerful friend, only one, but Iran has powerful friends now also, not just regionally powerful, and they are very powerful, as they've proved over the last almost 1 year. The people of Yemen, the people of Iraq, the people of Syria and Lebanon, the resistance axis, they are very powerful. But Iran has even more powerful friends in Russia and in China. The Russian defense minister was very recently there. There are reports of supplies, airplanes with Russian anti-aircraft weaponry, the SS-400. This changes the paradigm a little, doesn't it? Not suggesting that Russia and China are about to go to war with America, but the Americans have to factor these new power relations in too, don't they?
They should. They should. Now, that Russia-Iran cooperation on the military front has been going on for quite some time, especially since the Ukraine war began, because Iran came to Russia's aid and supplied them, for example, with the Shahed 136 drone. And that has been very successful. Russia, has been, I'm sure Russian soldiers have been very grateful for Iranian support. and so has the political establishment. And so there has been material coming in, as you noted. The S-400 SAM system is very good, as well as some electronic warfare equipment, and whatever else is coming in, we don't know. Apart from flights coming in from Russia into Tehran, there are flights going to the Russian airbase in Syria as well, which the IRGC can use because it's safe for them to use it because the IDF won't dare target a Russian base. So we don't know really what's being supplied. But at the same time, I would also say is that it's great for them to have these allies. But I think Iran can take care of itself. It's receiving material mainly to take care of one of its, I wouldn't say weaker areas, which is air defense. But their offensive capability is something that is sometimes underestimated by the Americans. And this is really why I think the US Navy that is steaming away in the direction of the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea is at great risk of suffering harm. I mean, I can explain it if you have time.
I do. The aircraft carrier has been told by Secretary Austin to hurry up and get to the Eastern Mediterranean. That might be an appointment with doom.
Yes, there's only one aircraft carrier there. There's Teddy Roosevelt I think last time I saw it was outside the Gulf of Oman, just outside the Straits of Hormuz, with about 5 support ships or 6 support ships, missile destroyers. And Teddy Roosevelt is on its way from the Pacific. It should be probably around the Gulf of Oman area in 15 days. And it's been asked to speed up. So the estimated time of arrival is about 15 days from today. But there are also some other ships in the Red Sea, Eastern Mediterranean, not to mention Marines and various other things. I think the United States seems to be under the impression that this is the age of gunboat diplomacy, the 1940s or 50s or whatever, when they could scare people. They could even, up to the 1980s, they could scare Iran by parking an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf, and under Ronald Reagan, landing Marines on Farg Island. But those days are because Iran has the IRGC airspace, especially, has prepared for this for the last 20 years. Since the Iraq War, when they knew there was a target painted on Tehran's back, so to speak, they set about developing a ballistic missile ring of fire, like a 2,000-kilometer radius from any part of Iran, but especially the Western Iran and Southern Iran, that can reach into, the missiles can reach into the Arabian Sea, Gulf of Oman, Red Sea, and Eastern Mediterranean. And they have different types of missiles for different purposes, for ships, for longer ranges, shorter ranges, for land attacks. So it's kind of like a toolbox of missiles. Each tool has a specific purpose. And it took them 20 plus years to develop it. And that is why they switched very quickly from strategic patience to strategic deterrence in April after the Israelis attacked the Iranian diplomatic facility in Damascus. The Israelis were not expecting a response. In fact, the chief of intelligence for the military intelligence, his name is Halavi, I think, Major General Halavi, was fired or forced into retirement 2 weeks or 3 weeks after Iran responded with true promises, because he had failed to estimate what Iran would do. And they were quite shocked at Iran's response. And I think the next response might be just as shocking.
Or more so. It'll certainly, according to all reports and the beliefs of all intelligence agencies, last for much longer and may be hybrid in nature. So finally, what is the capacity, in your view, for the kind of land interventions that I mentioned in my brief monologue? I mean, the fact that we're even talking about the possibility of the liberation of the Golan Heights with Russian help, acting entirely lawfully, because these heights are illegally occupied, indeed illegally annexed by Israel. The Syrians would have absolute legal authority to take back their territory. They'd merely be implementing UN Security Council resolutions. And in the case of the Galilee, the fact that we can even contemplate the liberation for however long of a part of Palestine is quite a shift in the tectonic plates, isn't it?
Yes. There's also the other thing to keep in mind is that, I mean, I follow some number of channels, outlets, media outlets, and Hezbollah and IRGC and so on, they also play a very good game of psychological warfare and propaganda. So when they say that they might take the Galilee, I'm not sure whether they intend to do it or whether they're just simply, upsetting the Israelis are already quite upset. I mean, you hear reports of them not sleeping well at night and being very scared and people going into bomb shelters and stuff. So there's a game going on as well. But to get to your point, yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know about the Galilee, but I think Golan Heights is a good chance they might actually try and do this because it would, apart from being a legal thing, it would also be a massive psychological blow to Israelis. And if there's one thing I've learned watching the Iranians over the last 20 plus years, is that they're very good at playing, the business of the psychology of really hurting the enemy in a way that really, really cuts them, wounds them very deeply. And if they lose the Golan Heights, Israelis would suffer very big psychological shock over it, apart from the military loss.
Is the Iranian leadership united behind what's going to happen next, or are there noises off from some quarters in Tehran?
Well, I would say is that when it comes to matters of war, it's Ayatollah Sayyid Khamenei and IRGC Leadership that will carry the burden. There are also the stories coming out. I don't know really, whether to give them any credence because there's also disinformation from various sides that President Pezeshkian is not thrilled or something like that. I don't know. What I would say is that when it comes to the matter of conflict, I think where it counts, there is unity. And actually, even talking to my friends in Iran, they've been chatting with, and they seem fairly, relaxed about what's going to happen, and they do understand why it has to happen. They're not panicking or being very upset. Their only complaint was that since it's happened, the value of the rial worsened a little bit. So that was all. But otherwise, I think, it's very hard because we don't really know what's going on in the inner sanctum, do we? So it would be just a speculation to say that there is some dissent or whatever. I'm sure there are voices that say, well, maybe you should do X instead of Y. That's quite true. That's quite reasonable. You also don't want to have a situation where everybody is like, oh yeah, great plan, and just agreeing to go with something that turns out to be a disaster. So it's good that they're having debates, but I don't think there's dissent that's fracturing the leadership. No, I don't think that's true.
Dr. Shivan, thank you very much for being with us. You've been the very mine of information as I expected you to be. Thank you for joining us on Have It Out with Galloway. Now, one of the unique characteristics of this show is that you get to be a part of it, not just on the telephone line, but on the screen. And from Gateshead in the northeast of England, our first participant is Fadi Echder. From Gateshead, go ahead, Fadi. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Mr. Galloway. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you for all your work. You've been doing a great job. I mean, everything you've done over the decades, I've been always impressed. I've been following you for a while. First time here, by the way. My question was about back in February 2024. Mr. Netanyahu proposed rejecting the establishment of the Palestinian state, and he proposed that for debate in the Knesset. On the 18th of July, it was made official by law in the Knesset that with 68 to 9 votes that they will not accept a Palestinian state. So my question is, why is the U.S. and the West governments still insisting on a two-state solution?
Well, I don't think they're insisting on it. I think it's a disguise. It's a fake maneuver by them. We've had 40 years nearly of a so-called peace process, which was endless process with no peace, let alone any justice. And so they've got to keep that chimera out there, that mirage on the horizon, to continue to justify their endless supply and resupply of everything that the apartheid state needs. So it's not that I believe Macron and Starmer and so on believe that there's ever going to be a two-state solution, but that they have to keep that chimera there for the confusion of the public opinion and the policy makers on both sides of the Atlantic. But that's not the only reason why there can be no two-state solution. First of all, the whole of Israel-Palestine is a very tiny piece of land. The Kruger Park in South Africa is bigger than the entirety of Israel-Palestine. So making two states out of that would, even with the best will in the world, be a deeply problematic, complex affair. But when you factor in that the parts of this small territory that were supposed to be the Palestinian state have now been paved with 800,000 Israeli settlers in gleaming cities, for that's what they are. Settlements sometimes conjures up the idea of people in tents or people in log cabins. This is Beverly Hills we're talking about. So 800,000 of those are living in Beverly Hills, complete with water sprinklers and golf courses in these illegal settlements, and the Israeli government could not move them even if they wanted to, and they do not want to. So there is no place where the Palestinian state could be. And thirdly, and I could go on, there's more, but thirdly, none of that does anything for the millions of Palestinians living outside as refugees. If they're lucky in Gateshead, if they're unlucky in refugee camps in Lebanon or in Jordan. These people have a legal right to return to Palestine, to their homes. Now, that would compound even if you had a willing partner on the Tel Aviv side. That would compound the issue enormously. So my solution is for one democratic state between the river and the sea, where everyone with a right to be there, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, lived as equal citizens under the law, under the Constitution. That's the only solution to this matter, in my opinion. Thank you very much. Let me go to veteran journalist Warren Thornton. Warren, what's on your mind today?
Hello, George. Given that we're only a few weeks into the disaster that is Starmageddon, I was going to ask you about their joint, basically, should we say, where they turn around with France and Germany and say we want a de-escalation in the region. Now, we know that American warships are going there. We know that they've got a US submarine on there, which is a nuclear submarine. And I'm hearing from my intelligence sources in Cyprus that they're upping the surveillance with flights from Akrotiri Air Base. Does this sound like a de-escalation to you, George, or is this a bullying policy of the Americans and the West?
Yeah, as Dr. Shivan pointed out, Warren, it's gunboat diplomacy, but from gunboats that are distinctly vulnerable and rusting, not just literally, although the British ones are literally, but rusting metaphorically too. This is from a 19th century playbook where Palmerston would order gunboats to the coasts to bombard the restless natives until they sued for peace. Well, Iran isn't like that. The world isn't like that. The balance of power in the world doesn't allow that. This joint statement to which you refer does not even mention the word Israel, not once in that joint statement from these Western leaders. So you're calling for an end to escalation without mentioning the principal escalator. Iran, Hezbollah, and the others will be responding to a dramatic and bloody escalation. But our leaders couldn't even bring themselves to name the party which has caused this situation. Never mind mentioning genocide as found by the ICJ, never mind mentioning arrest warrants as applied for by the ICC. None of that is mentioned in these joint statements. So somebody comes along, God forbid, Warren, and burns your house or my house down. But if we come out from the ashes determined to get justice, we're accused of escalating. It's perfectly absurd. And it's been treated, I think, in the region with the ribaldry that it deserved. Warren Thornton, top journalist, thanks for being on the show. Now, I've got an audio question for obvious reasons from Imam in Deir al-Ballah in occupied Palestine. Imam, welcome to the show.
Hello, sir. I am Imam from Gaza, displaced since 13 October 2023, a civilian and a mother of twin daughters who lost everything. Can you please give me answers to my questions? When will this suffering come to an end? When will be able to leave this trap? Will Egypt open the borders and waive the taxes required? Is there a way to force Israel to open the crossings for people to go out? Will we have a future as we dreamed of? Please, who can give us answers?
Well, I wish I could give you an answer, and a positive one. And my sincere condolences, and that of all the audience, I know, for what you have gone through. We are sorry that we have failed until now to stop the endless agony of the Palestinian people and the last most dreadful period of 11 months of genocidal massacre. When's it going to end? I don't know. There's no reason to believe that it is going to end. The Western governments are still supporting the apartheid state and its criminal gang of leaders, and the neighboring states are still collaborating with the same gang. I don't want to go through them name by name, but as long as leaders of Arab and Muslim countries are not just refusing to join the axis of resistance, but are positively a part of the axis of enablers that help Netanyahu to carry out these crimes, then I'm afraid that the worldwide solidarity movement, which will grow and grow, and your resistance, which will continue as long as two Palestinians remain alive, will have to continue to do everything that we can. You should not expect anything from Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. And they are respectively the president and the two contenders to be president. And all three of them are slaves to the Israel lobby. You cannot expect anything from the British Prime Minister, who told us, he didn't hide it, that he was an unequivocal supporter of Zionism. That means with no equivocation, with no qualification at all, he was a supporter of Israel and of the Zionist ideology. The same is true, even more extremely so, in the rest of the European Union. In the councils of the European Union itself and in the chancelleries of Europe, from the so-called left-wing Green coalition government in Germany to the so-called right-wing government of Viktor Orban in Hungary, all but one or two, and only on the Ukraine issue at that, are 100% behind whatever Washington decides to do. So I hate to be the bringer of bad news in that regard, but I not only cannot tell you when this will come to an end, I have to tell you that I have no reason to believe that it will come to an end. However, something dramatic is about to happen that may change the whole balance of power in the region. If the axis of resistance succeeds in inflicting strategic damage on the Zionist project and on the willingness of Western governments to remain completely behind that Zionist project, then you and I should talk again. Thank you for that call. Let's go to Alec Cave, leader of the Homeland Party. Alec, go ahead.
Mr. Galloway, you advocate for the Palestinians' right to self-determination, ethnic homogeneity, and to a nation-state. So my question to you is, why do you not support our people's right to self-determination, homogeneity, and a nation-state, and instead promote diversity and multiculturalism as demonstrated by your fierce pandering to the Islamic demographic in this country?
Well, when I saw your name was Cave, I figured you'd be a caveman. And so it turned out to be. First of all, I'm so in favor of Britain having the right of self-determination that I played a leading role in the fight for Brexit and the leaving of the European Union. I'm so in favor of British self-determination that I fought and was possibly the leading fighter in Scotland for the defeat of the separatist independence project. I believe in Britain and its unity and its sovereignty and its right of self-determination. Where you lost me, Mr. Caveman, was at this ethnic homogeneity, because you see, I don't believe in your kind of blood and soil nationalism, not least because I'm not of the same genus as you. You are white and English, and I am half Irish and half Scottish. I am Celtic, and you look distinctly pink to me. So we are not of the same ethnicity, and you just heard me say my policy on Israel-Palestine is for one democratic state between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, where Jews, Muslims, and Christians lived as equal citizens under the law. And guess what, Mr. Caveman? That's also my policy in Britain. I don't care what color of face. I don't care about your pink eyes. I don't care about your peely-wally demeanor. I don't care about the fact that you hail from one set of invaders of this island and I hail from another set of invaders. None of that means anything to me. I believe in democracy. I believe in the right of a people in a nation state to choose their own direction on the basis of one man, one woman, one vote, wherever they came from, whatever color they are, however they pray. So get back to your cave. Tim Scott is the executive director of the Freedom Association. Well, Tim, most welcome. What's on your mind?
Hello, George. And firstly, thank you for your support for Brexit. I remember that wonderful meeting at Westminster we had back in the day. And
It was.
just to butter you up before we probably end up disagreeing, you did actually, I think, give the best speech of the night. But I did warn your producer, knowing that it was your show, that I am generally pro-Western and often sympathetic to Israel. But I think one thing we can agree on, as well as Brexit, is that there's not going to be a two-state solution anytime soon. And I think, I suspect that neither of us sees it as being possible or even desirable, although I suspect for different reasons. You seem to want a 1948, not a two-state. You're calling for not just air attacks, but you appear to be calling for some sort of land invasion of Israel, which maybe you could confirm that. And you say you want a democratic Palestine from the river to the sea. Well, there haven't been any Palestinian Authority elections, as you will well know, for 18 years. In fact, President Abbas, I believe, is in the 18th or is it the 19th year of his 4-year term. But anyway, that's my sort of question. George, thank you for having me on, and I await your reply.
The fact that there are no elections, of course, has everything to do with the fact that the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, won the elections and were then besieged, sanctioned, starved, and regularly attacked. So it's kind of difficult for a supporter of Israel like you to hold that against them. But I'm against President Abbas. He's on your side of the argument. He's with you. He's your mate, not my mate. The leader that I follow in Palestine is in roughly his 20th year in an Israeli dungeon. He's the Nelson Mandela of Palestine. His name is Marwan Barghouti, and you should try to remember that name, because you will, I promise you, be hearing more about and from him. I'm in favor of one state. You can call it what you like. I favor this name. You can thank me later. The Holy Land. Let's have one state called the Holy Land, between the Holy River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. A state in which every person, whatever color they are, whatever religion they are, whatever ethnicity they are, live as equal citizens under the law. Now, you may well be saying that that's a pipe dream. But when I was underground, illegally, in apartheid South Africa, working for the African National Congress, led by Nelson Mandela, people in the Freedom Association were still supporting apartheid, and they believed that white supremacist apartheid rule would run South Africa forever. Now, you're a young man. I'm not blaming you personally, but the Freedom Association believed that Nelson Mandela was a terrorist, that black people would never be able to be trusted with power, and therefore democracy, one man, one woman, one vote, could never be allowed in South Africa. Guess what? We won, and we're going to win again. As to your points about air attacks, land attacks, I'm not calling for anything. I am describing what is possibly going to happen. and you may or may not agree with me, although by the weekend you might be forced to. Haman Singh Kapoor. Haman Singh Kapoor is in England, in London, and Haman is the next caller. Haman, welcome, brother.
I'm first time here and questioning someone's first time. Generally, my wife keep on questioning me. So first time I'm questioning someone here. So my question to you, Mr. Galloway, is, in the UK, the Palestinian flag is oftenly waved in rally, with participant receiving police protection and facing no fear of prosecution or any attack. Meanwhile, same time, any British individual, when he carries British flag, he gets hostility. Is it possible that if any British man wave his flag, British flag in Palestine without any fear?
Mm-hmm. I don't know in Palestine, right at this moment when the British flag is on the aeroplanes that are helping Netanyahu destroy whole families, whole congregations, whole communities, and kill and maim 168,000 people in 10 months. I doubt if the British flag is that popular. But the Palestinian flag, on the other hand, flies in the British Foreign Office. Eat that up, put that on your plate and eat it. When the Palestine ambassador goes to meet the British Foreign Secretary, the Palestine flag is there right next to the British flag. Anyway, your splendid patriotism will have been noted in the appropriate corners. I'm going to get a more sensible question, I know, from Dr. Ray Higginson in Wales. Dr. Ray, go ahead.
Hi, George. Can you hear me? I hope so.
Yeah.
Firstly, I want to say thank you for having me on the show for a second time. It's a great honor. I'm a member of your party, fought the election. My question is, given the horrendous riots that we saw recently, do you think, and I hope not, but do you think that these riots have adversely affected our cause for a free Palestine?
I don't, Dr. Ray, and I knew it would be a more sensible question than the one that preceded it. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to answer it. But I think that the tide has turned on the Palestine question amongst public opinion, not just in Britain, but across the Western world. Of course, there is no tide needing to be turned in the rest of the world. Public opinion in the parts of the world where 83% of the population of the world live is overwhelmingly in support of the Palestinian cause. But the tide has turned in Western countries, and it isn't going to turn back. And the principal reason for that is quantity. When crimes reach a critical mass of the mass that we have seen over the last 11 months, is very difficult for any sentient being, least of all one with a heart, not to be moved in a pro-Palestinian direction. But secondly, the reason is alternative media like this one. You see, when I started, Ray, in this cause in 1975, you had virtually no chance at all to get a pro-Palestinian narrative out into the open, into the public arena. Now, as some on the screen behind me weep for every day, the passing of that era is now so complete that if you were to stretch all the social media voices in support of Palestine and their supporters on Twitter, on Rumble, on Facebook, on all of these platforms, all over the Western world, well, it would stretch around the world several times. The truth is, Israel is bust from a public relations perspective. Politicians continue to be bought by the Israel lobby. They continue to be subverted. Our democracy continues to be subverted by the Israel lobby. But there are more people in the Western world today know the truth than have ever known it before. My apologies to those that were on the screen and didn't get on, but I hope the rest of you agree. It was the usual rumbustious edition of Have It Out with Galloway. And if you want to join me, please write to us, www.haveitoutwithgalloway.com. And I hope to see you there on the wall sometime soon. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.